You know how some people like to say that nobody hates Star Wars more than a Star Wars fan? Well, I reject that notion. I always have and I always will. I can't speak for everyone who's ever had an opinion on a Disney Star Wars project, but for me personally, I criticize it because I care. Even though I'm almost completely disconnected from this brand at this point, I always find myself gravitating back towards it from time to time. Whether that be revisiting the pre-Disney era Star Wars that I love, like I did with The Phantom Menace recently, or giving a new Star Wars project a shot, even though I have no confidence in Disney Lucasfilm to produce anything worthwhile. So to say that I want to hate Star Wars is not accurate. The real problem here is that nobody is giving me a reason to love Star Wars again.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
This is the thing that some people don't seem to understand. Not everyone is going to blindly support something just because they had love for it once upon a time. And the Acolyte, I'm sorry to say, is everything that is wrong with Disney Star Wars wrapped up in one giant Death Star-sized ball. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
One of the things that I think holds back modern Star Wars most is the discourse around it. A lot of people like to dismiss criticisms of modern Star Wars as nothing more than forced hate, brought on by bigots who don't want to see the franchise move into new directions.
That's racist.
Now, while it's entirely possible that there are people like that in the fandom, the reality of the situation is, a lot of the people who criticize Star Wars now have very valid criticisms. And when you try to dismiss those criticisms with labels and other forms of misdirection, that's how these annoying online culture wars start. We should be able to have conversations about what we like and do not like without it turning into a pissing contest. But when you have the studio itself doubling down on the name calling and basically co-signing what the people on social media are saying, that is when you have reached the point of no return, and that is where we find ourselves right now. The truth is that a lot of people have lost faith in Disney Lucasfilm, and rightfully so.
I knew it, I'm surrounded by assholes.
I think the bigger problem that I see, even more so than this forced hate that people like to talk about, is the forced praise that I see all over social media every time a new Star Wars project is released. Now, before you get all upset, I'm not saying that there aren't people who still genuinely enjoy the product. But I have noticed that some people are overcompensating with their praise, simply because in their mind that's the only way to balance out the criticism from the toxic fans on the other side. Right after its premiere, I saw reactions to The Acolyte that said things like, "This is top shelf Star Wars," or "These first episodes were peak Star Wars." Now, I know it's a strong possibility that these accounts are bots, or maybe even Lucasfilm employees masquerading as regular people.
What is real? How do you define real?
But to call The Acolyte, of all things, peak Star Wars is nothing short of a massive stretch. Listen, I can sit here all day and nitpick The Acolyte until I'm blue in the face, and I would be completely justified in doing so because there is a lot to nitpick. But when it comes right down to it, I don't really need to, because there is very obviously something fundamentally wrong with the creative process at Lucasfilm right now. Modern Star Wars in general, and specifically The Acolyte, fails on a general storytelling level every single time out. It's gotten so bad that shows like The Acolyte feel like they are Star Wars in name only. A parody, a cheap imitation. It's like they took the most general things about Star Wars and input it into an AI computer, and then asked that computer to write a new show for them, and out came The Acolyte. Meaning that it lacks any of the heart, any of the attention to detail that made people fall in love with Star Wars to begin with. And this is a problem with almost every Lucasfilm project.
Something very familiar about all this.
Put quite simply, it's like the human element to creating these stories has been removed. Everything about this universe that was originally created by George Lucas that allowed you to get lost in these stories is now missing. It's now just a hollow shell of its former self and basically just going through the motions. If you look at the basic premise of The Acolyte on paper, it sounds like it would be a pretty entertaining story. But as always, execution is everything, and it doesn't matter how good the general premise is, you will never be able to tell stories if you are more concerned with other things that you shouldn't be concerned with. That's why most people look at Disney Star Wars as one giant missed opportunity at this point in time. I got exactly 2 minutes into the first episode before I was greeted with some of the most emotionless and unnatural dialogue that I think I've ever heard put on paper.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Carrie-Anne Moss is great, and I will always love her because of The Matrix. And even the lead actress of The Acolyte is, I'm sure, a decent enough actress. It's just very clear to me, almost right away, that the writers of this series gave them absolutely nothing to work with. And the director, whose job it is to elevate the material, and if necessary, pull great performances out of their actors, isn't doing their job either. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, even if the dialogue is awful, at least we'll get some pretty entertaining fights. Considering this show is literally about an assassin extracting revenge on Jedi, that would make a lot of sense. But nope, what we get instead is very middle of the road fight choreography, and that's if I'm being nice. To go back to the dialogue for a moment, a lot of times it sounds like the characters are talking as if they are in our world and not in a galaxy far, far away. It really takes you out of the story and destroys any chance there might have been for you to get immersed in this world again.
No, don't like that.
And this is what I mean when I say it sounds like people trying to be Star Wars rather than just being Star Wars. Speaking of trying, this isn't the first time I've noticed this. I've noticed this in other Disney Plus Star Wars shows as well, but I'll bring it up again here. Why does the production value for Star Wars right now from a major studio look worse than your average fan film? I mean, even the costumes that some of the characters are wearing look like Spirit Halloween specials. I mean, this is a major studio with almost unlimited resources, and this is the best that they can do.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
It just goes to show me that they either have no confidence in the show to begin with, to even want to put any more effort into it, or they are just not hiring the most qualified people to bring this world to life. I've also seen a lot of talk already around the character of Gerard, who just might be the least convincing Jedi Knight ever put on film. I don't care that the person playing him doesn't know the basics of Star Wars lore. What I care about is you making me believe in this character, and making him a somewhat quirky Jedi who takes his shirt off to appease 15-year-old girls is not what I had in mind. When you have people fawning over this character on social media for doing absolutely nothing, we know that they've lost their way and that Star Wars clearly isn't being made for the same crowd anymore.
You're really talking about just raising your standards.
The other character that I see a lot of people praising is Sol, who is the Jedi Master who attempted to train the main character once upon a time. I guess compared to his castmates, he is the most believable in his role, but that's not really saying much either. But the truth is that the writers kind of phone it in with his character as well. They want you to be invested in his and the lead character's relationship, but they don't really put in the legwork to make it happen organically. It's like he looks at a hologram of her, he sticks up for her once, and that's supposed to be enough, I guess. I understand that we're only 2 episodes in and that there could be more to build on that relationship. But did we need an extended amount of time to care about Chewie and Han's relationship? No, we didn't. In fact, when Disney tried to expand upon their relationship, they ruined that too. To me, it's all about presentation. You only get one opportunity to make a first impression. And if you don't make your characters feel pretty important pretty early on in a TV series, it's definitely going to make it difficult for you to keep the audience invested for the rest of the show.
That makes sense.
And by the time the twist or reveal happens in this show, I already didn't give a shit. And that's supposed to be the thing that keeps you coming back for more. Disney Lucasfilm have tried their damnedest to get people interested in Star Wars again after they turned so many people away. They tried to go more dark and mature with Andor, and still nobody cared. And with The Acolyte, it's like they took the absolute worst parts of the prequel trilogy and made them worse somehow, and they took the general lack of focus of the sequel trilogy and just kind of mashed them together. Hokey dialogue, shallow characters, and the worst part of it all is it doesn't feel like Star Wars in the slightest. The whole hook of the show is that it's a murder mystery set in a galaxy far, far away. Something that we've never really seen before. Yet the reveal, a lame evil twin twist, happens in the first 2 episodes.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Wouldn't it have made more sense from a storytelling perspective to drag that out a little bit more? I mean, we shouldn't be surprised because Lucasfilm rarely does anything that makes sense. I think the Acolyte will be perfect for someone who is only looking at the surface level for something that remotely resembles Star Wars. For everyone else, the diehards, the people who care about things like lore, we already know that they don't want us anymore, and the Acolyte really hammers that notion home. The truth is that you can put all the lightsabers, familiar dialogue, and member berries into this series that you want. It won't matter because Lucasfilm has clearly lost the plot. They have drove this franchise into the ground, and the Acolyte drives it in even further. The only hope is that the Acolyte will be the final nail in the coffin that this franchise desperately needs. But if we've learned anything, it's that Lucasfilm does not learn from their mistakes, and they typically double down on their dumb decisions. Which is exactly how we got a show like The Acolyte in the first place. We all know why you really don't like The Acolyte. It's because you're an insecure man-baby and a bigot. Tell the truth. What's the real reason you don't like this show? This is a new era of Star Wars, and you'll have to get used to it, incel. So we're just gonna sit here and ignore the fact that the director of this show was the personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein? You know them Hollyweird types, they all gotta stick together. I'm not gonna lie to you, watching this show felt like I was getting escorted up to a hotel room to watch some fat slob pleasure himself on my favorite t-shirt. The Force is not female, it's for men, goddammit. The sooner Lucasfilm realizes that, the better.
Y'all be cool. Right on.